Welcome to the World Football Summit podcast, the show for football industry leaders who want to stay ahead of the game. We bring you the latest insights, trends, and stories from the experts driving innovation and progress in sports business worldwide. Join us as we dive deep into the ideas and initiatives transforming the world of football. From sustainability and innovation to player development, fan engagement, and everything in between. Our goal is to unite the global football industry and drive positive change and progress. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Hakim, CMO at World Football Summit. Are you one of those folks in the industry wondering what's behind Saudi Arabia's push towards becoming a leading global football hub? This week, we traveled back to World Football Summit Asia, which took place in December 2023 to find out. Thanks to an amazing panel that included the participation of Carlo Nohra, Chief Operating Officer at the Roshn Saudi League, Mohammed Awlia from the Ministry of Sports, Romeo Jozak from the Saudi Arabian Future Falcons, Omar Hakim from Serie, in a panel that was very well moderated by Andy Jackson from FootballCo. And you will listen to them speak about the role that bringing super players must play on and off the pitch, the impact that a robust football league has beyond sports, specifically in culture, and the socio-economic development of the country, and the ambitions from each angle towards the 2034 World Cup, meaning the point of view of the Pro League, from youth football, public institutions, in the end, everybody in the ecosystem. And they talk about so much more. But before we go into it, don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast on your platform of choice and share it with your industry colleagues. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, where every week we send updates, trends, and everything that goes on at our events and in the industry. You can find the link in the show notes. The thing is, 2024 is going to be a busy one for World Football Summit, as we have events in London, Mexico, Sevilla, and you can check it all out on our website. Nothing else from my side. I hope you enjoy the episode.
I'd just like to kick off, obviously Natalie gave the brief introductions, just to come to each of you in turn, just to give the audience a quick introduction to yourself and your role.
Should I start? Good morning to all. Thank you for the invitation. It's an amazing event to present Saudi football to the world. My name is Romeo Jozak. I'm a technical director of the Future Falcons program within the Saudi Arabian Football Federation.
Carlo?
Good morning to you and to everybody. Thank you for having me here. My name is Carlo Nohra, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Saudi Pro League.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here. Mohammed Awlia. I am the General Manager of Strategic Planning for the Ministry of Sports.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Andy. It's too loud. On behalf of Serie, who I represent today, I'm the Arabian Partnerships and Business Development. Thank you to World Football Summit, and it's an honor for me to share the stage with these gentlemen driving the Saudi football transformation.
Fantastic. So look, it is football after all, so I'm going to break this into two halves. I'm going to look at the impact on the pitch first, and then we'll look at some of the impact off the pitch, which I think are both equally important parts of the strategy. So looking at on-pitch matters, Carlo, I'm going to come to you first. The summer transfer window, over 30, high-profile, big-name international players coming into the Saudi League. I mean, how is the signing of those big-name players, where does that sit in fulfilling the strategic direction and the global appeal of the Saudi Pro League?
Well, it was a massive step in delivering on the strategy that was put together. And from the outset, the Saudi Pro League was given a set of objectives, the topmost of which was to improve quality on the pitch. So the acquisition of these players has definitely provided us with that. Again, the strategy called for international players to be brought in. So again, another tick to the box. But most significantly is the impact it's had on one of the other objectives, which is to increase attendances and utilization of the venue. All of that summed up then had a huge impact on the monetization and commercialization of the league. So we've seen massive uptake in sponsorship, as well as in not only the global reach, which we had acquired through Cristiano Ronaldo's acquisition to the league, but with everybody else joining as well, we started to see the needle move on the monetization of that global coverage.
Okay. Omar, from a Serie A perspective, I mean, I'm going to show my age a bit here, but I remember a similar influx of superstar talent in the 80s and 90s, and which opened up Serie A, particularly to a global audience, but in the UK, someone like me with Paul Gascoigne and players like that. From your perspective and working for one of the traditional Big Five leagues in Europe, how do you see the strategy that the Saudi Pro League is adopting?
Okay, well, as you can see from my name, I come from an Arab family, but I was born and grew up in Italy. So I was lucky to grow up in what was at the time the most beautiful championship in the world. For almost 3 decades, we had Italy was final destination for all these megastars. I have a very vivid memory when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. My father brought me a football of Zico, who back then was in Udinese. So, my father was a Juventus fan. He had Platini. I was a Roma fan. I had Paulo Roberto Falcao. My good friends, they were from Napoli. They had Maradona. Each one of us had his own hero. And what I see today in Saudi with my nephews living in between Jeddah and Riyadh, it's the same thing with Neymar, Benzema, Ronaldo. That passion and enthusiasm is always the same. I think Saudi is doing a great job, not only with bringing the mega stars, but obviously it's the entire ecosystem that is growing at a very, very fast pace.
Right. Well, I'll come to you from a federation viewpoint. What opportunities does this present from a player development perspective for you? And how does this strategy with the influx of these players sort of cascade down and deliver a positive impact throughout all levels of the game?
As everybody knows, the principles and conditions of the player development are well researched and done already. This is a target. It's a big goal. It's a big challenge to have the exit level of the player development set really high, on world level set really high. We can compare now probably to rest of the leagues now closely. However, we got to be careful that the entry level is also being done accurately, timely, and properly. That means we have to start early enough to push from below, As you know, a premiership in England is strong, but championship is also strong. So we have to have the level of the development. We have to go as early as possible. All the latest structural changes that SAF together with the ministry is changing the leagues of the youth, implementing the B League, implementing the structure for the development is going to be a strong step in order to reach the level of the exit level that Saudi Arabia has now.
We were talking quickly off stage before we came on. At what age do the national sort of like programs start?
The national team usually start at the age of 15. However, the pre-selection go even earlier, 14, 13, even 12. General development of the program of the youth should go very early, 7, 8, 9, even younger in some countries. All the grammar schools in the world start at the age of 7, more or less. So we have to be really careful using the time. When the puberty kicks in, the technical development pretty much slows down. That means whatever we've done up until the puberty, in that part of the development, pretty much we've done everything. So we have to use the time from 8 to 16 to actually increase the development of technique. However, we have one big luck that Saudi Arabia has a talent. It's a nation with a good culture, with a talented culture. So we have a good pole position. We have a good starting point. However, 16, 17, when the competition starts, we have to reach it really, really strong in order to catch up with the guys playing in the Saudi Pro League.
Okay. Mohammed, I'll come to you from a Ministry of Sport perspective. How do you see the ministry's role in the formulation, execution, and support of this strategy?
Maybe to answer this, maybe I take a step back and really define what the ministry does. So essentially, our core mandate is to orchestrate, regulate, and most importantly, enable. So football is a huge sport. We're born watching football. Yesterday was a full stadium watching the kickoff for the FIFA Club World Cup. So essentially, as we view these strategies and really pinpoint on the word enable, we're trying to create the right framework. One, to ensure we continue growing the league, the sport, and most importantly, set ambitious targets, measured KPIs so we can drive towards them. And we see this, for example, with the initial privatization of clubs. I think we've done our first pilot and we continue to roll out, working towards improving federations, especially in football, empowering women in football. And maybe a last example could be working on creating the right governance and institutionalization of clubs.
Right. Carlo, in addition to the superstar imports, I think one of the notable things about the Saudi Pro League as well is the fact that pretty much the entire national team squad still plays domestically in the league. How important is that to maintain that balance for the Saudi Pro League's objectives domestically as well as internationally, that the best local talent is also here?
It is absolutely critical. I mean, what we're doing here is providing a pathway, an improved platform for the national players by having them rub shoulders with the foreign players that come in. And going back to what Romeo was saying, our strategy is not just to acquire players, it's a player development strategy. Bringing in the top end can only rub off on what happens as you work your way towards the grassroots and the age groups. So it's essential that we provide opportunities for the Saudi players as much as we do for anybody else. So our strategy links both ends, and we have to work with the entire ecosystem to ensure that the professional layer at the very top is supported by everything that comes below it.
Yeah.
So providing those opportunities are absolutely critical for the Saudi players.
And also, I guess, still important for young Saudis that are growing up and participating, and this will bring me to Romeo next, but they still see their heroes and their local heroes as well as the international superstars from an aspirational point of view.
No, of course. I mean, that aspiration element was critical to the strategy as well. Is meeting the lofty goals that have been set for us by the leadership of the country, led by the ministry, was to improve that quality. So the watermark for quality has moved up tremendously by the acquisition of those players. And we've taken steps as well. For example, the lowering of the professional age from 18 to 16 is to provide greater exposure for the younger talent, to be able to share a pitch with the high quality that we have brought in from overseas. But essentially, that's why we're doing all of this, to ensure that the talent pathway continues to grow at a much better quality than it had been before, albeit that it wasn't bad at all. Saudi is AFC under 23 champions without conceding a goal. Our clubs have participated in 4 of the last 5 AFC Champions League. The national team has participated in numerous World Cups, I think 6 out of the last 8. So we're just building on the quality and the passion that exists in the country at a participation level, but equally from a viewership and other types of consumption of the sport.
Right. So, Romeo, I'll come to you on that. So, obviously important from your perspective that the Saudi Pro League continues to offer that pathway for the emerging young Saudi talent. And, do you see a day when Saudi players might be in demand and be tempted away by some of the traditional big clubs? Is that?
We all... One of the core answers to all these questions is objective quality. If there's a quality within the XYZ player, of course, there's a demand. Right now, within the Future Falcons program, we have a primary goal to detect players to take them to Europe at the early ages, 18, 19, 20, because we can't sign them in Europe objectively earlier, and then place them. So far in the Future Falcons, we already had more than 120 tryouts at the clubs, had more than 220 players developed through the program. We signed 38 players in European clubs in the mid-ages groups. So there's a demand there. Demand is maybe a strong word. However, there's a possibility for them to play. So far, we have one player. He's under 20 national team player. He's playing a serious football in Europe. These guys are using the existing structure in Europe already to overcome some obstacles in the development, because the league is getting stronger and stronger. The way I see it in the near future, probably the first division, the second tier in Saudi Arabia is going to be probably the level where most of the players are going to be developing in order to reach the top.
And for the young players in your programs, seeing players like Ronaldo close to hand, week in, week out, can only help with their development and understanding of what it takes to get to the absolute.
It's huge. It's huge. Also, not only seeing them face in live when you see the game. However, the media is transmitting the information, what it takes to be the player on that level. So everything Ronaldo does to sacrifice to actually do as a professional in order to get that level, it helps us huge in the development of the players.
And Mohammed, from the ministry perspective, where obviously your view is to take that holistic view of sport in the kingdom. Where does a successful and thriving local league fit into that?
I think if we think about it, when we look at, a successful league that is complemented with a lot of activations, interventions when it comes to ensuring we have the right programming, the right infrastructure facilities, public pitches, like Carlo mentioned, ensuring that we have programs for pathways, grassroots, amplifying mass participation. But beyond that, we look at it from a socio-economic lens. It's a job generator. We have big targets to unlock a big number of jobs by 2030. On top of that, there is a clear link to commercial revenues and GDP contribution. So while a successful league is a good thing, it comes with a lot of positive externalities around it.
That's a great point. Yeah, great point. Omar, from obviously, we're talking a lot about Saudi Pro League, but you're here representing Serie A in the region. So where do you see the opportunity and the space for Serie A to play in Saudi Arabia, and how do you plan on engaging those fans and sitting alongside the domestic league?
Right. Well, as Serie A, we want to be part of this transformation. We are the first league that held its Super Cup right here in Jeddah some 6 or 7 years ago. We will play 4 of the next 6 Super Cups in the region. It is a strategic market for us. We are working on several different verticals since we opened our office almost a year ago. We are launching, from the brand awareness point of view, we're launching a new talent show that's going to be televised in 6 episodes. Some 5,000 youth players are being scouted. One of them, they're scouted between Saudi, UAE, Morocco, and Egypt. One of them will win the opportunity to play in Serie A in a youth football team. We are about to launch our first official Serie A academy, and it will be in the region. Our strategy is a strategy of localization and being actively present on the ground.
Great. Obviously, the last World Cup was a fantastic platform to showcase the passion of Saudi fans to the world with a famous victory over Argentina. And what was striking is that young Saudi football fans look pretty much like young football fans everywhere, all over the world, passionate, knowledgeable, engaging. Carlo, the role that football generally and the Pro League can have in growing the appeal amongst international fans to visit Saudi Arabia. We've got the Club World Cup here. We'll see fans from a number of continents and following their teams here. Do you see that part of your strategy as well, is to make the Saudi Pro League a place where international fans want to come and visit and take in a game?
Definitely. Mohammed alluded to it already. The love and the passion for the sport in this country should make it a net contributor to GDP. It shouldn't be costing the government any money. We're quite fortunate to have a leadership that's willing to support us to get to the other end of this journey, where football can stand on its own commercial feet. Part of that is definitely all of the economic benefits that come along with it, especially tourism. And we're seeing some tremendous demand from outside the country for match tickets. And we're busy trying to sort that out so we can fulfill that demand from far off places like Indonesia, for example, which has quite a considerable inbound traffic around Umrah that would like to have tickets packaged along with it. So the attention, the focus that the new incarnation of the SPL has brought all of that attention with it, and it's definitely a driver for traffic into the country. And we're quite proud that there is a national product that has such demand.
I say, 2 weeks ago, watching the Riyadh derby in London, I would certainly wish that I was in the stadium watching it, because it was a fantastic spectacle. And Romeo, just quickly before we leave the on pitch bit, for young aspiring talent in your program, kids that are 10, 11, 12 now, the prospect of potentially a World Cup in Saudi Arabia in 10 years' time must be just an incredible motivation and target for them. How do you bottle that up for the young players there who might be in contention for a national team place?
I mean, even people, I'm sure know that, but we just to confirm, we've done analysis of the last 5 World Cups, of the average age of the teams winning it. So going to Qatar, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, and Germany, we've analyzed the average age of the top 3 teams in all these respective World Cups. And it's between 25 and 29. So we got to aim strategically, to reach and have the majority of the squad of the national team that's going to be 26, 27, 28. Why? Because they're still young enough, they're old enough, they're experienced enough, they're hungry enough. When I say hungry, motivating, they're still on the top level of the performance in order to deliver the expectations. Those kids are now 17.
Yeah.
They're now 18. They're now 16. So next year, we're going to bring to Europe, to our training camp in Spain, we're going to bring the U16, 2009 players that are going to be, well, they're going to be 27, 26 in 2034. We're going to use the partnerships we have, the clubs in Europe. And here we have Mr. Federico Cerombini. He is a director of football staff of Juventus. We partnered up with the biggest clubs in Europe in order to use each other in a positive way for them to compete against our players that are top level players. So competing against Juventus U16, against Manchester United, against we're going to raise the level and push it towards up. This is the idea, to actually use that 10-year time in order to reach the best quality and age for the World Cup.
Fantastic. I'm going to move on to off-pitch now, look at more some of the off-pitch impact. Certainly on Goal, which is our number one flagship global international football website, we've seen a 6,000% increase year on year on consumption of Saudi Pro League content, which is pretty phenomenal. And in the first 2 months of the season, we saw over 14 million people outside of the kingdom viewing Saudi Pro League content on our and that's just on our website, let alone social media, which would be hundreds of millions more. Carlo, did you imagine that the impact would be that immediate? You know, and how are you turning that into a commercial benefit through both broadcast and sponsorship?
We didn't envision the impact to be as big as it was. It was certainly expected, given the type of investments that we were making into the league. But we're very pleasantly surprised with the numbers that you've just mentioned, and that multiplies across our own and operated platforms as well as everybody else's. So tremendous impact. And we're beginning now to see how monetization against those eyeballs and that interest is growing as well through the sponsorship commercial program that we've got, as well as the international broadcast. Unfortunately, we were already into the second season of our 3-year regional broadcast cycle, so we won't see that step up until the end of next season. But undoubtedly, if we continue this trajectory, we'll have a massive commercial, social viewership impact on the product.
And similarly, with from a sponsorship perspective, the next sort of step would be to global sponsors of the league activating on a global basis.
Definitely. But look, it's, again, small incremental steps that we have to take along this journey. I think people forget that with all these numbers you mentioned, we're still only 6 months old in this incarnation, right? So we are where the J-League was in 93 or the MLS was in 96, 97, and great progress in a very short period of time. But we can't go from almost a zero start to where we could potentially be in one half of a season. So the next step for us is to look at the next commercial cycle and how we interpret what the fans really want and how we can deliver that for them. And the beauty about where we sit today is we're not shackled by football history or tradition, virtually a clean canvas that we can paint whatever we would like on. And hopefully we can be as innovative as we should be, because we have to recognize that to really deliver on the objectives that have been set for us, commercially especially, we have to accept that we are no longer an organizer of a competition, but we are more a content production, almost a media company. And with that hat on, the vision for the world is very different, and we've got to tackle it through that perspective.
Yeah. And Mohammed, from the ministry's perspective on that, how important is that global recognition and reputation and interest from international fans from your perspective? And how do you look to capitalize on that heightened international interest and audience?
I think, if we refer back to our North Star Vision 2030, we have very ambitious targets, one of which is the 100 million tourists. The league is one of the beacons that shed lights on the transformation that is taking place in Saudi. So it could be a potential gateway for cultural exchange. It could be a good gateway for discussing investment opportunities within Saudi, improving private sector contribution. The opportunities are, endless on how we can maximize a expanding league and sort of the growth of interest within fans. But that also puts on our shoulders a big mandate to ensure that we improve fan experience within Saudi and globally by, like Carlo mentioned, ensuring that we have very strong content. We are, ensuring that we are tailoring our approach to different audiences and ensuring we continue expanding the love of football.
Omar, so how have you viewed that sort of emergence of the Saudi Pro League into the global consciousness of football fans and more specifically in Italy? Have you seen it start to get traction in Italy?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to add another point to what Romeo was saying. A very important thing that we saw in Italy back in the good days is not only bringing the megastars, it's actually cultivating your own megastars. So with Saudi embracing this project that would probably peak in 2034, the grassroots are a crucial part. Besides bringing the big players from abroad, we were growing our own, like Nesta, Maldini, Totti, these all grew Baggio, they all grow from the grassroots. To go back to your question, in Italy, now SPL obviously is televised everywhere. In Italy as well, after a beginning skepticism, about all this big spending, things are now changing. But I still think it's going to take some time. We Italians were a bit more conservative, so but it's going to happen. It's inevitable.
Romeo, coming back to you from a young player's perspective, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo, renowned for his on-pitch achievements, but also off-pitch is the most followed person in the world, let alone football player on Instagram. Social media's role in players, their development, it is impossible to ignore now. So, and the heightened media attention globally that comes with that. Are you using that as a learning opportunity for young players in the national setup as well? Like the off-pitch demands of becoming successful, and obviously as they then break into their domestic league, which is then one of the top 5 leagues in the world, comes scrutiny. And are you using that as a learning opportunity to prepare them?
I mean, the social networks and social media is creating one phenomenon which you cannot even touch, and that is a pressure.
Yeah.
So how do you create a pressure is something what is just unexplainable. To somebody is, to somebody is not. So social media is creating in our young players the awareness that Saudi Arabian national team player is not as it used to be in the past. So it's been more open when the national team comes and play. It's completely different. So, for example, when you have a player at the age of 12, he's delivering, he's performing. However, we need to teach them to deliver and perform when it matters, when it counts, when it's serious, and that's when the SPL comes in. So we have to teach them in order to develop them properly, to develop under pressure. And social awareness is creating a pressure of the Saudi young football talent, helping us in order to put extra pressure on their back to develop properly.
Okay. So to create those diamonds.
Exactly.
Carlo, obviously, from a league perspective, one of the benefits of bringing players like Cristiano, Karim Benzema is that huge social following. And we saw the numbers that migrated to Al Nassr's to follow Al Nassr, and that catapults the clubs into a different dimension. How do you see that as strengthening the league's position domestically and internationally? And how do you tap into that for the period of time when they're playing in the league? How do you make sure that that's not just a transient following and converts into long-term fandom for the league?
Well, it works in our favor at the moment because they are incoming players and they bring their audiences along with us. And that's something that we recognized as part of the strategy as well. We need to bring in these players, not only because of what they do on the pitch, but what they can do off it as well for us, which goes back to the second half of this session. So it's absolutely imperative that we recognize how we can reach audiences these days. And the old traditional media model of getting eyeballs through broadcasters around the world has changed considerably. And now we aggregate audiences through multiple platforms. And again, there was a phase when it was only our own platforms that counted. But now we recognize that through the audiences that come with the players, we can multiply immeasurably almost the reach of our product. And it's essential that we put that to good use to deliver this phase of our growth, which is essentially a reach phase of the journey. And I cannot emphasize how important it has been for us to reach not only the core football fans, but to reach much wider than that. And that is also part of our strategy, because the days of 90 minutes of football on a weekend are gone. We've got to fill in the gap in between with content that appeals to a huge cross-section of demographics. And part of our ongoing strategy is how much content can we deliver to get to the furthest person out who has absolutely no interest in football, but has an interest in the player and the player's lifestyle. And those are audiences that in the past we never used to capture, but now are not necessarily focal point for us, but they are not an audience that we can ignore.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. We've just done some research looking at it to the Euros, and one of the data points that came out of that surprised me. What didn't surprise me, what was interesting to see it, was that 40% of fans said that not watching a live game of the Euros would not diminish their enjoyment of the tournament. So it's not about the fact that football fans, the interest in football amongst young fans is disappearing. It's just that it's changing, and it's not necessarily, as you say, just about the 90 minutes. It's about everything that goes on around it. So Omar, from coming to you from a Serie A perspective, how are you addressing that new breed of fan for whom the live broadcast is not the central focus or fundamental to their enjoyment of the sport? And to Carlo's point, going beyond the on-pitch 90 minutes to everything that sits around football now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the way the new generations, they consume the football product is much different than ours. For us, it's always been pizza, friends, and the 90 minutes game. I can hardly keep my kid watching the game for 90 minutes. They need to receive a different stimulus. They need to be engaged differently. And in addition to that, they have always access to a tablet or to a phone. So social media is a part of their life. So we need to engage them during the week. And that is one of our focal strategy in the region. We are focusing a lot on all the social medias. We have just launched less than a month ago our new Arabic TikTok channel, which is actually growing exponentially. So I believe that is the way of continuous engagement with just new generations.
Right. Mohammed, another piece of research that we did earlier in the year into Gen Z and their engagement with football, one of the striking things that came out of that, because Saudi Arabia was one of the markets that we surveyed, was the high participation rate, of not just watching football and being interested in football, but playing football at any level, from social up to organised football. And it far outstripped Europe and youngsters in Europe, which was quite surprising. I mean, how important is that the trickle effect down means that this can help engage and motivate just active participation in football, not necessarily to end up in a national team program, but just for the health benefits and social benefits of that, both amongst young boys and young girls, and that halo effect that cascades down and just motivates people to pick up the ball and go and play. How important is that for you?
I mean, extremely important as we think about our national sports ambitions beyond football, across sports. Mass participation is a key pillar. And if I zoom into football is the most, in terms of passion, fellowship, etc. Football, for Saudi is life. So we need to ensure that we are enabling it as a ministry by expanding the number of coaches, by improving accessibility to ensure that across Saudi, in every region, the distance to a pitch is very close. And not only focusing on boys, but also making sure that we have diversity and inclusion to allow everyone to play football. So our view is, across the next 10 years, how can we expand the number of clubs, expand the number of coaches, bring the top academies to Saudi, and ensure that we have pathways from mass participation to talent development and all the way to playing in the national sports team.
Fantastic. Look, we've got time for one final question, and I'm going to address the similar question to each of you. We've just spent the last 35, 40 minutes discussing the benefits of the international superstars gracing the domestic league. I want to look ahead to the potential of a World Cup coming to Saudi Arabia in 2034, when the best players in the world would come here for a months-long festival of football, and where you'd see the domestic league by this point, if indeed the bid is won. Carlo, I mean, where's the Saudi Pro League at that point? In 10 years' time, and what would hosting a World Cup mean for the next phase of the league's development?
I love prediction questions, so it's anyway. Look, we certainly hope to be far evolved from where we stand today. 10 years is a long time, and with the ambitions and aspirations that we have, we certainly wish to be much higher up the ladder league rankings than where we stand today. But most significantly is to be one of the more entertaining leagues in the world that's being watched the world over. That's about the best way to quantify it right now. But the World Cup is a huge undertaking, and for us will be a massive tentpole event to aspire to deliver a league and a set of players that can make the country proud. However, it is a transient point in time. It kind of sets us up for the next 50 years. And it's essential that between now and then, we build a sustainable property that will completely outlast the World Cup in 2034, which will be a high point in the history of football in the country. But we need to survive well beyond that as well.
Thank you. Omar, from your point, that in that 10-year period, where would you like to see Serie A and Italian football forge deeper bonds in the kingdom? Where do you see the opportunity for you in the next 10 years?
Well, we want to bring Serie A back to where it belongs. So within this strategy of expansion outside of the Italian territory, we opened an office in New York. Less than a year ago, we opened here in the MENA region. Singapore will follow shortly, and I can anticipate we'll open also here in Riyadh. I often go visit my friend Carlo Nohra. I bring coffee, he brings manaish, and we discuss about potential cooperation between the Saudi Pro League and the Serie A. And there are many points of common interest. The way we see it is our strategy, it's a 360 degrees one, from the grassroots to the Lega Serie A Academy, to the talent show and brand awareness, to being present on the ground with officers, with games. What I would like to see is having more Italian clubs coming to the region also for friendly matches or tournaments, and vice versa, having Saudi teams go to Italy. We believe this holistic approach is the right one.
Right, Romeo, from your perspective, we touched on that as a North Star for the young players, but what's the potential for the young Saudi players currently in the national team setup over the next decade, do you think?
Potential is great. Saudi is a talented nation, really some serious young talent. I just one more time would like to emphasize, imagine the opening match in the 2034 ceremony, the national team squad, the whole world is watching, already speaking about it now, 10 years ahead of time. In order to reveal that pressure that these guys are going to have, we at this point now have to try to teach them to play in a level of the self-confidence. Why? Because when there's a self-confidence in any activity, the heart beats lower, the performance stabilizes, the delivery gets better. So it's all about being self-confident, achieving a certain activity. In order to do so, we cannot expect they're going to play against opening match against Spain or whatever and do well unless we, 10 years before that, play these guys already. So, for example, next, I'm going to reveal a bit of a secret. Next, in 10 days, the U18s, the future Falcons U18s are playing Juventus U18s on the Allianz Arena of the main stadium of Torino. That means, imagine 10 years before, you already play. Of course, the stadium is not going to be full because they're U18s, but the level of the atmosphere for them to already play these guys on that level 10 years before is going to help them in a 10-year time. The same thing with the World Cups, the same thing with the U20 World Cups, everything we need to have. We have amazing provider, Al Musafir, that is giving us all the options to Europe, play any teams we need to play and want. That means we want to prepare them to be able to play on that level in 2034.
Great. Mohammed, I want to give you the last word. From a ministry perspective, where would you like to see the Saudi Pro League? What are your hopes and dreams for where the Saudi Pro League might be in 10 years' time?
I agree with all points mentioned, first of all, and I think this is not a stunt. This is a plan with very, longevity. We want the sustainability there, but that means over the long run, we want to expand viewership. We want to ensure that, it's economically viable and it's generating the right commercial terms. But also, and most important, is fan experience, local and global. How can we continue over the next decade in adopting the relevant technologies, adapting to trends when it comes to content creation. And I maybe go to what Omar said. I'd love to see Saudi Pro League offices globally. And Carlo, I put pressure on you here, but
No pressure, Carlo.
it would be amazing. Now, not only for this is to export SPL to the globe and ensure that we have presence and footprint internationally.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great point to end on. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Thank you for my panelists today. Great stuff here.
And there you have it. A brilliant panel on the ambition behind trying to make Saudi Arabia a leading football hub. Let's try to sum up the main takeaways. First, remember the classic flywheel. The objective is to improve the quality of the game. Why? Because this drives greater attendance. And, that means greater broadcasting revenues, more partnerships, more commercial opportunities. At the end of the day, it's about growing the ecosystem, not just about what happens on the field. But also, that means growing the base, improving the quality of the youth. That's a critical piece. Saudi Arabia does have quality. There's a culture for football. There's passion for the game. So enabling participation is key. Also, I really like the framework of the role that public institutions must play of orchestrating, regulating, and most of all, enabling football along the entire ecosystem. Remember, the role of superstar players goes beyond visibility. It needs to inspire the local player to train harder and to level up their game. A successful league does have a socio-economic aspect that needs to be considered. It needs to create jobs. It needs to drive commercial revenue that is linked to GDP contribution. And of course, drive sports tourism. All of these activities, at the end of the day, improve the quality of the overall country, not just the sports industry. And remember what Carlo Nohra said in that sense. The SPL is now a media company. It's not just the competition. Content is key to reaching new audiences, and players that are brought in need to improve the quality of football that's played in the country, but also help expand the reach beyond the core football fan. Did anything else stand out to you? If so, make sure you reach out on social media. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe and rate podcasts on your platform of choice and share it with your industry colleagues. I want to thank you for tuning into this episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it and that you learned something new. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.